I was never the kind of person who shopped at dollar stores. It wasn't out of snobbery. My parents had just raised me differently. They were the coupon-clipping, deal-hunting, brand-loyal type who made grocery lists with military precision and shopped only at Kroger or Target. By the time I moved out, that routine was wired into me. Dollar stores just weren't in my orbit. But life has a way of humbling you. By 26, I was living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in a worn-down part of Charleston, South Carolina. I had just left a corporate call center job that drained the life out of me. Constant yelling customers, scripted replies, and supervisors who treated us like replaceable parts. I found a new job at a shipping warehouse, night shifts, better pay. But my body clock never adjusted. Weeks of 4 hours of restless sleep at a time left me sluggish, dizzy, and permanently on edge. Rent was due. My bank account barely kept above zero. Suddenly, a place like Dollar Zone started looking less like a punchline and more like survival. It was a Tuesday night in late March. I remember because the air had that in-between feeling. Winter not quite gone, spring not fully here. The streets were quiet as I pulled into the nearly empty lot. One buzzing street lamp flickered overhead. The gas station next door had only one pump lit. Behind it sat a run-down motel, the kind with faded paint, half-broken neon signs, and curtains that never opened. A place where shadows lingered even during the day. Inside Dollar Zone, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting everything in that washed-out, too-bright glow that makes even fresh food look stale. The shelves leaned slightly, filled with knockoff brands, Dawn dish soap, Swipper mop pads, chips with strange cartoon mascots I'd never seen. A woman at the counter didn't even glance up when I walked in. Her phone lit her face blue as she scrolled. I grabbed a little red basket and started toward cleaning supplies. At first, it felt harmless enough. The kind of late-night errand you forget 5 minutes later. Until I felt her. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't movement. It was presence. That subtle shift in the air when someone is close enough to change the energy around you. I didn't look up right away. I kept staring at sponges, pretending to read labels, but my skin prickled. Someone was standing there. When I finally turned, I saw her. A short woman, maybe mid-40s. Dark, thick hair teased high like something out of the 80s, but frizzed at the edges. A floral top that clashed with loose, faded jeans cinched at the waist with a fraying belt. Cheap white sneakers scuffed nearly black at the soles. None of that unsettled me. But her eyes did. Deep set, wide, too wide, like she hadn't blinked in minutes. I smiled politely. Instinct, that practiced half-smile women use when we sense danger but don't want to provoke it. She didn't smile back. She didn't even shift her gaze. I turned into the next aisle. She followed. Then again. And again. Every aisle I tried, she found a way to appear within a few feet of me. Not close enough to bump into me, but close enough to feel her watching. Her timing was unnatural, like she wasn't even pretending to shop. Just orbiting me. My basket's handle creaked under my tightening grip. I faked scrolling on my phone. My throat was dry, but I didn't want to clear it. The silence between us felt like it would shatter into something terrible if I made a sound. And then it did. I was near the frozen food section when I heard her voice. Low, mumbled, but the words were clear. "You smell like my daughter." My stomach dropped. The freezer door handle was cold against my palm, but my body burned with adrenaline. I turned slightly. She was standing in the middle of the aisle, staring at me. Her pupils were blown wide, so dark they seemed to swallow the rest of her eyes. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I left the freezer aisle, walking fast but not running, heart hammering so hard it hurt. The cashier rang me up in silence. I shoved the bags into my arms and bolted for the parking lot. The night air slapped me in the face, sharp and damp. My car sat under the buzzing light, the only sound the crinkle of plastic bags as I loaded them into the back seat. That's when I noticed it. A dusty silver sedan parked at the far edge of the lot. I didn't remember it when I'd arrived. Its windows were dark, too dark. My chest tightened. I fumbled with my keys, slid into my car, and locked the doors. My headlights flicked on. So did the sedan's. It rolled forward slowly at first, then angled toward me. My pulse spiked. I shoved the gear into reverse, but before I could move, the sedan lurched forward and struck me. Metal groaned. My body jolted against the seatbelt. Behind the wheel was her, Rosalind. Her face was twisted into a grin so wide it looked painful, teeth bared, laughter pouring out of her mouth. Not a normal laugh, a dry, broken, rattling laugh that echoed in my ears long after she slammed the gas and peeled out of the lot, vanishing into the night. I called 911 with shaking hands. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They listened. They nodded. They wrote things down. But there was something in their eyes that told me they weren't surprised. Later, an officer called me with what they'd learned. Her name was Rosalind Baines, once a school teacher. Divorced, fell into addiction, turned to sex work. She'd been living in that motel for months with a man they called her boyfriend, or her pimp. The silver sedan, his car. She had stolen it. He never pressed charges. Off the record, one officer told me about another incident. Rosalind had once followed a young girl through a CVS, insisting the child was her missing daughter. The girl was a stranger. They found Rosalind 3 days later wandering barefoot near the interstate, disoriented, mumbling, taken for psychiatric evaluation. Not arrested, not charged. I never saw her again. But I can't forget her eyes, that laugh, the way she followed me silently, aisle after aisle, like I wasn't a stranger but something she'd already claimed. For months I'd wake at 3 a.m., staring at shadows on my ceiling, convinced headlights would sweep across my window. Convinced she was out there, waiting. I haven't set foot in a dollar store since, and I never will. Back in 2014, I was living in Redfield, a small upstate New York town where the air always smelled faintly of diesel and old wood. Rent was cheap because nothing there was new. Apartment buildings leaned on each other like tired drunks. Windows fogged with age, paint peeling in long strips. Nobody moved to Redfield by choice. You ended up there when you couldn't afford to live anywhere else. I was one of those people. I had dropped out of community college halfway through my second semester when I couldn't pay both tuition and rent. I found a rundown one-bedroom apartment with yellowed carpet, a heater that rattled like bones, and a bathroom fan that screamed every time you flipped it on. I told myself it was temporary. I just needed work, something to keep me afloat until I figured things out. That's how I ended up working part-time at the local Dollar Tree. It was a small store, barely 10 aisles. We had a sad little stockroom in the back and an even sadder break room with a microwave that made everything taste like rubber. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a paycheck, minimum wage. Long hours on my feet. Most nights, customers treated me like furniture. I didn't complain. I didn't have the luxury. I usually worked the closing shift. From 3 p.m. to 10 p.m., I was the only one on duty. It sounded worse than it was. After 8:30, business slowed to almost nothing. The last half hour was usually dead silent. That quiet time was my favorite. I'd tidy the aisles, sweep the floors, and wait for the clock to hit 10 so I could lock up. But sometimes quiet isn't peaceful. Sometimes it's wrong. It was a Thursday in late October. I remember the weather vividly. Unnatural. Warm, sticky. The kind of humid air that didn't belong that late in the year. By 9:30, I hadn't seen a soul in 20 minutes. I sat behind the counter, slouched low, thumbing at my phone. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A faint pop song leaked from the ceiling speakers, so warped and distant it barely sounded like music. That's when I heard it. A clatter, sharp, metallic, somewhere in the middle of the store. I jerked upright, pausing my game. For a long moment, I just listened. My ears strained in the silence. It sounded like something had fallen. Maybe a bin, maybe a stack of paper plates. Shelves in this place were old. Stuff tipped sometimes. I told myself it was nothing. 3 minutes later, another noise. A thump. Louder this time, heavy, deliberate. The hairs on my arms stood on end. I glanced toward the aisles, but from behind the counter I could only see the ends of the shelves. No movement, no shadows, and the front door, still locked. I hadn't heard the entrance bell ring since the last customer left. My heart started tapping a little faster. The silence had changed. It wasn't the empty, harmless quiet I was used to. It felt expectant, like the store itself was holding its breath. I put my phone down. Slowly I stood. My sneakers squeaked against the tile. "Hello?" I called, my voice cracking in the sterile air. No answer. I forced myself forward. Aisle 6, maybe 7, where the noise had come from. The fluorescent light flickered faintly overhead, buzzing like an insect. I turned into aisle 7 and stopped. On the floor lay 2 items, a stack of aluminum foil trays and a package of holiday napkins. They hadn't just slid, they were thrown. I crouched, picked them up with trembling fingers, and placed them back. The shelf looked undisturbed otherwise, perfectly lined rows. Too perfect. I straightened. The silence pressed heavier against me now. My skin prickled with the electric weight of being watched. Then came another sound. Crash! From the opposite end of the store. I flinched so hard I nearly dropped the napkins. My heart thundered against my ribs. The sound came from the toy section, plastic on tile, hard, violent. I forced my feet to move. My legs felt stiff, mechanical. Each step echoed too loud in the empty store. When I turned the corner into aisle 2, my blood ran cold. In the middle of the aisle sat a bright red toy truck flipped upside down. Behind it, a stuffed unicorn lay on the floor, one of its glass eyes missing, staring blankly up at me. I hadn't stocked toys that day. Nobody had been in that aisle when I last walked through. Then I heard it. Footsteps, light, quick, running, not toward me, away, toward the front of the store, toward the register. I bolted, shoes slapping against the tile. My breath came in sharp bursts. I rounded the end cap and froze. There was a man, standing behind the checkout counter, my checkout counter. He had one knee up on the small ledge, both hands yanking violently at the register drawer. His movements were frantic, jerky. The locked drawer refused to open. He slammed the side with his palm, teeth clenched, veins bulging in his neck. My voice came out strangled. "Hey, stop! I'm calling the cops!" The man's head snapped up. For the first time, I saw his face. Thin, pale, eyes bloodshot and wild. He didn't speak. He didn't flinch. He just went back to pounding at the register like a rabid animal. I backed toward the office, fumbling for the landline, but my hands shook so bad I nearly dropped my cell. The man gave up. He spat on the counter, grabbed something small, maybe a pen, and hurled it across the store. Then he bolted. The bell above the door screeched as he yanked it open. Then silence. I ran to the glass, locked the door behind him. The parking lot outside was still, the single street lamp buzzing. I couldn't see where he'd gone. It was as if he'd dissolved into the night. The cops arrived 10 minutes later. I explained everything. They nodded, looked around, asked for camera footage. They left with a report, but not much else. He was never caught. And here's what keeps me awake years later. He must have been in the store before closing, hiding, quiet, patient, waiting for me to let my guard down. He wasn't just some random thief passing by. He was already there, watching me. Close enough that if he wanted to, he could have walked out of the shadows at any moment. That thought has never left me. I quit a few weeks later, told them it was because I found a job closer to home. But the truth, I never felt safe in that building again. Even now, when I pass a Dollar Tree in broad daylight, I feel it. The creeping memory of that wrong kind of quiet, the kind that hides someone breathing just out of sight. I used to pull the morning shifts at a dollar store on the outskirts of town. Mornings were supposed to be easy. You'd unlock at 8 a.m., flip on the lights, do a quick sweep of the aisles and wait for the regulars. Mostly older folks who came in for cheap canned goods, cleaning supplies, and off-brand cereal. That morning, though, the air felt heavy when I unlocked the doors. It was early spring, but the store was colder than usual. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering faintly like they hadn't warmed up yet. By 9:30, I had a few customers browsing, one older man picking through greeting cards, a mom and her kid digging in the toy aisle, and then her. She came in fast, almost like she had been waiting outside. A woman in her mid-40s, hair wild, sticking out from under a red beanie. Her coat was stained in dark blotches, her jeans frayed at the cuffs. Something about her eyes made my stomach twist. They were wide, watery, darting around the store like she was searching for something only she could see. At first, she just wandered the aisles. She'd pick up random items, sponges, a can of shaving cream, a plastic doll, then put them back only to grab them again seconds later. Her movements were twitchy, unnatural, as if her body was being pulled by invisible strings. I told myself she was just another unstable customer. We got plenty of those. But then she stopped in front of the freezers. We had one long line of upright freezers along the back wall. They hummed constantly, doors fogged with condensation. Inside, boxes of frozen pizza and microwave burritos leaned against each other in uneven stacks. The woman pressed both palms against the glass, slowly, deliberately. Her breath fogged the door, and then she started whispering. At first, I thought she was talking to herself, but when I moved closer, I realized she was talking to what was inside. I couldn't hear the words at first, just a low, murmured chant. Her lips moved fast, her breath quickening. She pressed her forehead against the freezer door and began to scratch at the glass with her nails. Long, slow drags that left streaks. "Ma'am," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. She didn't look at me, didn't flinch. I tried again. "Ma'am, you need to step away from the freezer." This time she turned her head. Her face was pale, lips trembling, and she whispered something that made my blood run cold. "They're trying to get out." I froze where I stood. Her eyes widened more, and then, in one violent motion, she climbed. She grabbed the freezer handles and pulled herself up like an animal. Her boots slipped against the glass, but she scrambled until she was standing on top of the freezer case, crouched like a feral cat. By now, the other customers were staring. The mom pulled her child close, whispering nervously. The old man dropped his cards and backed toward the door. I called out again, panic tightening my throat. "Get down from there! Right now!" But she didn't move. She bent low, pressing her ear to the freezer top. Her hands flattened against the metal. And then she started laughing, not the kind of laugh that belongs to a person. It was jagged, wet, like it was being dragged up from somewhere deep inside her. Her head snapped toward me and she screamed, high-pitched, guttural, and animal noise. I stumbled back. The mom rushed her kid out the door. The old man was already gone. Before I could reach for the phone, the woman lunged forward and dropped down behind the freezers. I couldn't see her anymore. I just heard the scrambling, the scratching. By the time the police arrived, she was gone. We reviewed the security footage later. The cameras had caught her wandering the aisles, yes. But when it cut to the part where she climbed the freezer, the feed glitched. The screen went static, and for nearly a full minute, all you could see was warped black and white fuzz. When it cleared, the freezer aisle was empty. No woman, no trace. The officers searched the store, the stockroom, even the dumpster out back. Nothing. For weeks afterward, every time I walked by that freezer aisle, I swore I could hear it, the faint scratching sound coming from inside the glass, like fingernails dragging, begging to be let out. I quit not long after. But sometimes when I walk past freezers in other stores, I catch my reflection in the glass. And for the briefest moment, I see it, the shape of a woman in a red beanie crouched on top, smiling down at me through the fog. I grew up in a small town in southern Kentucky, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. We had 2 gas stations, one diner that closed by 7, and a Dollar General that sat on the edge of town like a beacon in the dark. For most of us, that store was more than just a discount shop. It was where you went when you needed milk late at night, school supplies before a test, or laundry soap when you were broke. It was open later than anything else, and in a town where not much happened, it became a strange sort of gathering spot. I was 22 then, living at home with my mom after a bad breakup. Money was tight, and Dollar General was where I did almost all my shopping. It was a Saturday night in early spring. Around 9 p.m., I decided to make a quick run. I needed shampoo, some chips, and dog food. My mom asked if I could also grab milk. I almost didn't go. Something about the night felt off, the way the air hung heavy and still, but I brushed it off. The parking lot was nearly empty when I pulled in. Just two other cars. One belonged to the cashier, a girl I recognized from high school. The other, I didn't know. An old white sedan with one headlight out. I remember clocking it right away. The engine was running, though no one was inside. The faint smell of exhaust carried across the lot. Inside the store, everything looked normal at first. The cashier gave me a quick nod, barely glancing up from her phone. The store was bright, too bright almost. Fluorescent lights humming above the empty aisles. I started in the pet aisle, grabbing the cheapest bag of kibble I could find. Then I cut down toward the shampoo. That's when I noticed her. She stood at the far end of the aisle, staring straight at me. A woman, maybe late 30s, wearing a faded hoodie and jeans that looked 2 sizes too big. Her hair was stringy, dark, hanging in her face. At first I thought maybe she was just browsing. But she wasn't holding anything. She wasn't even moving, just staring. I looked away fast, tried to pretend I hadn't noticed. I grabbed a bottle of shampoo and turned down the next aisle. A moment later, I heard the faint squeak of sneakers on the floor. When I glanced up, she was there again. Different aisle, same spot, same stare. I felt my throat tighten. Maybe she was harmless, maybe she just looked weird. But something in my gut screamed that wasn't it. I hurried toward the food section, tossing a bag of chips into my basket just to keep moving. My pulse hammered in my ears, then I heard it, a whisper. So faint I almost thought I imagined it. When I turned, she was right behind me, too close, her face inches from mine. Her breath reeked of cigarettes and something sour. Her lips twitched into what I think was meant to be a smile, but her eyes were wide, bloodshot, and unblinking. "You smell familiar," she murmured. I stumbled back, my basket slipping from my hand. Bags of chips spilled across the tile. My voice shook. "Excuse me." I pushed past her and walked fast toward the register. My chest was tight, every instinct in me screaming to get out. But when I reached the counter, I froze. The cashier was gone. Her jacket still sat on the stool, her phone charging behind the counter, but she wasn't there. The front of the store was silent. I turned toward the door, praying I could just leave. That's when I saw the woman again. She was standing in front of the glass exit doors, blocking them. Still smiling, still staring. For what felt like forever, we just stood there, locked in some awful silence. My skin crawled, my breath shallow. I clutched the bag of dog food like a weapon. And then, like nothing had happened, she turned. Slowly, casually. She walked out the door, the bell above it chiming softly. I didn't wait. I bolted after her, sprinting across the lot to my car. My hands shook so badly I dropped my keys twice before jamming them into the lock. That's when I saw it. The old white sedan with the bad headlight was still idling, and she was climbing into the passenger seat. Someone else was behind the wheel. A man, head-shaved, face shadowed. He didn't look at me. He just put the car in gear. They drove off slow, too slow, like they wanted me to see. I sat in my car for a long time after, shaking so hard I couldn't breathe. Later I asked the cashier what happened, why she left the counter. She swore she hadn't. She said she never saw the woman at all. When I told her what I'd seen, her face went pale. Because that wasn't the first time someone had described a woman like that. A few weeks earlier, another customer said a woman in a red hoodie had followed her through the store and whispered in her ear. The police shrugged it off. Probably drifters, they said. But the part that still keeps me up at night? 2 days later, I saw that same white sedan parked 3 blocks from my house, engine idling, headlight out, and this time I didn't stick around to see who was inside. When you grow up in a small town, the dollar store isn't just a store, it's the store. Our dollar store sat right off the 2-lane highway, a squat yellow building with a faded sign that buzzed whenever the wind blew. There was a gas station down the road, but besides that, it was the only place open late. I was 19 when I got hired there, my first real job after high school. The hours were long, the pay barely above minimum wage, but it was steady work. I usually got stuck with the closing shift, which meant from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. it was just me. No manager, no second cashier. Just me in a store full of fluorescent lights and silence. At first, I didn't mind. The quiet gave me time to think, and most nights after 9 we only had 1 or 2 stragglers. But then there was her. It was a Tuesday night in late November, cold enough that the wind cut through my jacket, the parking lot empty except for my old pickup. I just finished facing the candy aisle when the doorbell jingled. A woman walked in. She was tall, gaunt, maybe in her late 40s. Her hair stuck out in greasy strands beneath a knitted hat. She wore a heavy coat even though it wasn't that cold inside. Something about her eyes unsettled me. They didn't just look at me. They latched onto me. She didn't grab a basket, didn't even pretend to shop. She just wandered the aisles, slow, deliberate, her boots squeaking against the tile. I watched her from behind the counter, every nerve in my body tight. After a few minutes, she stopped in the middle of aisle 4. She tilted her head back and started whispering. At first, I thought she had a Bluetooth headset or something. But as I stepped closer, I realized her words weren't normal. They weren't even full sentences, just fragmented phrases, broken murmurs. Not here. Not yet. Smells wrong. I froze halfway down the aisle. My heart hammered so loud I thought she'd hear it. "Ma'am," I forced out, my voice shaking. "We close in 20 minutes. Her head snapped toward me too fast, like her neck didn't work right. And then she smiled. Her teeth were yellow, lips cracked. She whispered one more thing I'll never forget. "You'll let me out, won't you?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat felt like it was closing. I turned and hurried back to the register, gripping the counter like it was the only solid thing in the world. She didn't buy anything, didn't even come near the counter. Instead, she slipped into the back aisle, the one by the stockroom door. And then she was just gone. I checked the store 3 times before closing. Every aisle, every corner, nothing. The door never chimed. She hadn't left, but she wasn't there anymore either. By the time I locked up, I was shaking so bad I dropped the keys twice. I sprinted across the dark lot and didn't breathe until I was in my truck. The next morning, I came in for my shift and told my manager. She gave me this weird look and said, "Funny. Someone else said they saw a woman like that last week. Red hat, whispering." But she disappeared before anyone could stop her. The security cameras were checked. And here's the part that still makes my stomach twist. The footage showed me talking to someone in aisle 4. I'm standing there, frozen, lips moving like I'm speaking. But there's no one else in the frame. No tall woman, no red hat. Just me, staring into empty space. I still don't know what she was or what she meant by "let me out." But every time I pass that store now, I glance at the windows. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I see a pale face in the glass. Watching. Waiting. Back in 2017, I worked at a Dollar Tree in a dying strip mall. Half the units were empty, their windows covered in "for lease" signs. Our store was one of the only places still open past 9 p.m. I usually worked evenings, closing up around 10. Management hated paying for extra labor, so most nights it was just me on the register and one other person in the back doing stock. Sometimes, if the other person called out, it was just me. One Friday night in November, it was just me. The first few hours were normal. Families came in after dinner, a couple of regulars picked up toiletries and frozen dinners, and then around 8:45 the place went quiet. Completely quiet. No customers, no hum of voices, just the faint buzz of the overhead lights and the low groan of the freezers in the back. I killed time by zoning out at the register, scrolling my phone. Then I heard it, a bang from the stockroom. I froze. Nobody was scheduled back there. I hadn't seen anyone walk in. But the sound was too heavy to be a box falling. It sounded deliberate. "Hello?" I called, my voice cracking. No answer. I grabbed the little box cutter we kept by the register, useless as a weapon, but it made me feel less exposed, and headed toward the stockroom. The door creaked when I pushed it open. The smell of cardboard and cleaning supplies hit me. For a moment, nothing seemed wrong. Then I noticed something strange. One of the tall stacks of toilet paper had been dragged out of place, leaving a gap just big enough for a person to slip behind. My stomach turned cold. "Store's closed in 10 minutes, I said loudly. "If you're back here, you need to leave." I waited. Silence. Then came the whisper. Not loud, not clear. Just a rasp from behind the stacked pallets. "You smell like her." My heart nearly stopped. I backed out slowly, keeping my eyes on that dark gap, and slammed the stockroom door shut. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the keys when I tried to lock it. I forced myself to finish closing. My chest was tight, every sound amplified. The clink of hangers, the shuffle of candy bags, even my own breathing. When I finally killed the lights, the whole store sank into darkness, except for the faint glow of the exit sign. That's when I heard it again. From the stockroom. A slow, dragging sound like someone pulling their feet across concrete, and then 3 knocks on the inside of the stockroom door. Deliberate, measured, waiting. I didn't wait to find out what it was. I bolted, locking the front doors in record time, and sprinted across the lot to my car. The next morning, I told my manager. She didn't even look surprised. "Yeah," she said, "you're not the first. We think someone might be sneaking in after hours, hiding back there. Homeless, maybe, but the cameras never catch anyone. Just shadows." I quit 2 weeks later. Couldn't take it anymore. Still, sometimes when I drive past that old strip mall at night, I look at the Dollar Tree's back door, and I swear I can still hear the knocking. I wasn't someone who usually shopped at Dollar Tree. Not out of pride, just habit. I grew up going to Walmart and Kroger, and old routines die hard. But when I moved into a small duplex on the edge of town, the Dollar Tree a few blocks away became convenient. Rent was cheap, my job barely paid enough, and honestly, sometimes the difference between $5 and $10 meant skipping dinner. So one Tuesday night around 8:45 p.m., I decided to stop in. The parking lot was half empty. 4 or 5 cars scattered across cracked pavement, the overhead lamps buzzing like angry hornets. The shadows stretched unnaturally long, moving slightly even though the air was still. I parked close to the entrance. A faded sign above the door flickered. Dollar Tree. Everything's $1.25. Inside, it was quiet. Too quiet. The music overhead was warped, tinny. Some overplayed pop song barely audible through busted ceiling speakers. An older man sat at the register, flipping through a flyer. A bored teenage girl leaned against a Valentine's Day candy display, chewing gum and staring at her phone. I grabbed a cart with a wobbly front wheel and started down the aisles. There were maybe 3 other shoppers, a woman with a crying toddler near the school supplies, a mechanic-looking guy grabbing off-brand soda, and another woman I noticed immediately. She stood out. She was tall, late 30s maybe, wearing a faded jean jacket and a red beanie pulled low. Her face was unreadable, like she was thinking about something far away. She lingered in the toy aisle, not shopping, not touching anything, just hovering, watching. I brushed it off at first. People are weird sometimes. But as I moved through the store, I kept catching glimpses of her, always standing still, always watching. By the time I reached the freezer section in the back, I heard a thump. I spun around. She was climbing. Both hands gripped the top edge of the tall freezers as she hoisted herself up like it was the lip of a swimming pool. Her boots scraped against the racks, knocking a few cans onto the floor. She didn't flinch, didn't even look at them. She pulled herself up into the narrow gap between the freezer tops and the ceiling tiles. At first I thought maybe she was homeless, looking for a place to sleep, but then her head appeared again, just her head poking over the freezer edge. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide, wild, unblinking. "What are you doing up there?" I managed to stammer. She tilted her head, lips cracking into a smile. "Just needed a second," she muttered. Her voice was low, gravelly, like she hadn't spoken in hours. The crying toddler went silent. The mechanic froze mid-step, soda bottles dangling from his hands. Everyone was staring now. And then, without warning, she stood upright on top of the freezer, balanced there like a bird, 1 step, 2 steps, 3. And then she jumped, straight into my cart. The metal shrieked as it collapsed under her weight, groceries scattering across the floor. Frozen peas burst from a ripped bag, rolling in every direction. The woman crouched in the wreckage, her head snapping left and right in short, jerky movements. Then her eyes met mine again. "You smell like her," she whispered. The teenage cashier screamed. The older man at the register bolted for the door. The mom clutched her kid and ran. But I couldn't move. My body refused. The woman crawled out of the cart on all fours, her fingers gripping the tiles like claws. She scuttled past me into the next aisle and vanished. When the police arrived 15 minutes later, they searched every inch of the store. The stockroom, the ceiling panels, even the dumpster outside. She was gone. The mechanic swore he saw her sprint toward the back. The mom said she disappeared into thin air. The cameras? They showed my cart collapsing, groceries scattering, me stumbling backward. But no woman. To this day, I can't explain it. All I know is, every time I pass that Dollar Tree, I look toward the freezer aisle, and I can almost hear the squeak of boots on metal, the dull thump of something heavy landing where it shouldn't. And sometimes, when the store's lights flicker just right, I swear I see a tall figure in a red beanie perched above the freezers, watching, waiting. I've worked at a lot of places, but nothing has ever stuck with me like my short stint at a Dollar General on the outskirts of town. It wasn't just a store, it was an old building, patched together over decades, sitting alone on a 2-lane highway with nothing around but woods and a gas station half a mile down. Locals used to joke the place was cursed. They'd say, light bulbs blew out for no reason. Items shifted shelves overnight. And sometimes, when you were in the aisles late at night, you'd hear someone call your name, even if you were alone. I didn't believe it. At least not until the night everything changed. The night shift. It was a Thursday in late fall, just past 9:30. I was scheduled to close by myself. The store was dead quiet, no customers for the last half hour. Just the hum of the coolers and the buzzing of one dying fluorescent light above aisle 3. I was restocking paper towels when I heard it. "Help me." A whisper. So faint I almost thought I imagined it. I froze, holding a 12-pack of towels against my chest. "Hello?" I called. No answer. I forced myself to laugh. Must have been the air vent, or the radio static, though I hadn't turned the radio on tonight. I shook it off, went back to stocking. Then I heard it again, louder this time. "Help me, please." The boy in the aisle. I spun around, and there he was, a boy. Couldn't have been more than 10 or 11. Standing halfway down the aisle, pale skin, dark, messy hair, oversized hoodie. I hadn't heard the door chime, hadn't seen anyone come in. "Hey, buddy," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Where's your mom or dad?" He didn't answer, just stared. Then he lifted a hand, slow, deliberate, and pointed toward the stockroom door at the back of the store. I swallowed hard. The stockroom had always felt wrong. Cold drafts even in summer, shadows that stretched too far. "Are they back there?" I asked. The boy nodded once. I glanced toward the front of the store. Empty, no cars in the lot. When I turned back, he was gone. No footsteps, no sound, just empty aisle. I should have walked out right then. Locked the doors, called the cops, called anyone. But something pulled me toward that stockroom. The door creaked as I pushed it open. The smell hit first. Mildew, dust, something sour underneath. The fluorescent lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows across stacks of unopened boxes. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing against the concrete walls. No answer. Then, thud, from the far corner. I inched closer, weaving between pallets. My pulse pounded in my ears. That's when I saw it. A small, child-sized hoodie lying crumpled on the floor. The exact same one the boy had been wearing. I bent down slowly, reaching for it. And that's when the whisper came again, so close it felt like someone's lips were right at my ear. "Don't let him find me." I shot up, spinning around. Nothing. Just shadows shifting against the stacks. Then the lights went out. The entire stockroom plunged into blackness. For a few seconds, the only sound was my own ragged breathing. Then, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Not the boy. Too big. Too deliberate. Each step crunched closer on the concrete floor. I fumbled for my phone, flicked on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, shaking with my hand. But the aisle was empty. The footsteps stopped. And then, from the darkness, two glowing eyes low to the ground, watching me. I didn't wait. I bolted, crashing into boxes, tripping over shrink wrap, sprinting out the stockroom door. When I burst back into the main store, the lights were on again. Everything was normal. Silent. Except for the boy. He was standing at the end of the aisle, right by the freezer doors. "Thank you," he whispered. His lips barely moved, and then he blinked out, like a light switched off. I never worked another night shift. In fact, I quit a week later. But the manager told me something before I left. Years ago, long before I started, there'd been an abduction in that very Dollar General. A boy had gone missing, last seen by his mother near the toy aisle. They never found him. Sometimes when I drive down that highway at night, I pass the store. The lights glow weak in the windows, and I swear if you look closely at the glass, you can see a small face staring out, waiting for someone to finally take him home.